Hey everybody, welcome to the Uber Cordero Show. This week's edition, we're talking about Black Lives Matter and what it means to be an anti-racist and African viewpoint. The point of this week's discussion is to highlight how white supremacy and the control of the world through Eurocentric views and Eurocentric institution is a global phenomenon, and what Black Lives Matter is not just an issue in America, it's also an issue in other places in the world populated by people of African descent. That's the point I'm trying to make this week. And why am I doing this? Ever since I introduced this show, people ask me why I'm doing it, and one of the reasons is that I want to bridge the intellectual gap. I want to bring out theories and studies of African and African diasporic theories into the mainstream. I want to make sure that everybody understands this and it's just not exclusive to those who went to college. Number two, I feel this is my contribution to society. As an African immigrant living in America, this is how I feel I can contribute to this society, and I can leverage my position of privilege to connect Africans and African Americans. A little bit about myself. I am a scholar of international relations. I also hold a master's degree in African diaspora theories, and I've also studied international relations at the master's level. And so I'm coming into this discussion from an academic point of view, and all the views that I hold here are also nuanced by my position as a Christian. So I'm talking to the masses as a Christian, analyzing this situation. All right, now let's get to the point. We're talking about Black Lives Matter, and for many people it is an issue of police brutality in America, of institutional racism. Now the first thing we have to do is to look at three layers of racial thinking, three layers of how to critically analyze what is going on. And one of the things that I want to talk about is to offer a definition of what is racism. You see, everybody, it's used all the time, everybody talks about it, but there are very few detailed analyses of what racism means at the individual level. So what is racism? Racism is to, broadly speaking, to discriminate people based on how they look, their skin color, their physical appearances. But that's just a limited definition of what racism is. That view of phenotypical features as the endpoint of racism is not comprehensive. What I argue is for us to look further into how this racial dynamics, racism and the institutions that come out of policies made out of differential treatment of people affect institutions, affect power relations, affect state structures, affect religions, affect cultures. This is what the Black Lives Matter movement is about. Now, if you think about racism, you have to think about the structures and institutions which support it, which promote it, and which make it impossible to defeat sometimes. Right now, and in the 60s there was a civil rights movement which was going on, most famously led by Martin Luther King and other civil rights activists, women and men involved. There were white people and black people all involved, and they were fighting for the civil rights, which was signed in 1968. Now, the civil rights movement was intended to end racial segregation in the United States, mostly in the South, to end what we call Jim Crow rules. But it was really a fight for decency, of acceptance of people's humanity. It did not go further. It did not uproot institutional racism in the culture, in the police forces, in every dynamics of power. So even though the 1968 Civil Rights Act was signed, it was hoped that it will eliminate racism and racial discrimination on other institutions. But it started a process, jump-started this conscious and awareness of how these institutional legacies have affected different people. Black Lives Matter corrects this. It takes the issue from where Martin Luther King and the likes, and it's an issue of this generation to correct what was not done in the past. Now, you could say, well, I'm not a racist, and that's possibly okay. And I know many people watching this show are not, and some will be, and I can't control that. But to be not racist is to accept people phenotypically and to not judge them. But it is not out there. It's not enough. It does not get you out there to correct these historical legacies that continue to hurt people. So to be not a racist is not enough. And to be not a racist is to be a fence sitter. It's not going to help anybody. So the point here that I'm trying to bring out is that what we need in this present time is anti-racism. And anti-racism is the acceptance of every human being as human, and the ability to understand that human beings come in different forms and different shapes, different races and different languages, and it also to dismantle racial thinking, racial ideas, institutions, and every form that assumes that other cultures, other people are superior to others. That is anti-racist, and I'm borrowing here from Ibram Kendi, who wrote the book Stamped from the Beginning. It's a very important book which I want everybody to read if they can. The point I'm trying to make is that Black Lives Matter is a global movement. White supremacy is alive in Africa, and it's also present. Just because it is invisible doesn't mean it's not there. And that's why I argue that as much as this is a police brutality issue in America, Africans are also involved in it and should just protest as hard as they are in America. I should be seeing protests in Nairobi, protests in Johannesburg, in Lagos, in Cairo, everywhere. Because the point why I make that conclusion is that colonialism did not end when independence was gained in Africa. And a lot of the institutions which were racist were built in the colonial era, which lasted about 100 years plus. Those institutions still exist, and those institutions still affect people of color and still hurt them in some cases, just as they do in America. So if you are walking around as a black person and you are saying, well, that's an American issue, you are wrong, because the evidence shows that police brutality, especially in the city of Nairobi where I live, is intense for young black males. Those police officers, often trained on colonial tactics, still deploy those tactics to unemployed young men who are criminalized and taken around town for sometimes not committing anything. That is a white supremacist thinking. That is not helping anybody. It's not anti-racist. There are also cultural practices that we do, and we should be thinking about it. For example, why is it that in music videos people are obsessed about light-skinned and white women in music videos? Why is it people are obsessed about men, are obsessed about things that they consider very European cause, European ideas? Why is it that this fixation on Western standards is so embedded in our society that we don't question it? Our hairstyles, things like that. And this is what I'm talking about. If you hold certain thoughts of this kind, or you think, oh, it's professional or it's not, then you're probably not anti-racist, and you are pro-racism without knowing. And why is it that music, which sometimes has a long history in Africa, isn't accepted as classical music, that isn't accepted as mainstream popular music? Why is it that even Afrobeat is banging so hard everywhere? You don't hear it in American radio stations. This is the question that I bring out. This is how theory gets out of the classroom and comes to life. And this is all I'm about. And I'm trying to say that anti-racism is not anti-Europe. Anti-racism is just anti-racism. It's a quest for humanhood. It's a quest for people to be accepted for who they are, to be loved and to be cherished in whatever way. It's also homophobia. It is also anti-Islamophobia, anti-xenophobic. It's accepting people for who they are. And that is why we say Black Lives Matter is a human idea that is crying out for everybody to embrace it. Thank you. If you like this video, subscribe for more, and you can send me an email or a message on Facebook, Twitter, everywhere, and I'll be willing to talk to you more. Thank you.